For more, let's bring in the Heritage Foundation Chief Economist, E.J. Antoni, along with Fox News contributor and Steamboat Institute fellow Kaylee McGhee-White. Welcome to you both. Good to see you. E.J., I'll start with you. You're a guy who values education. I know you do, because you got to crunch numbers. You got to know how to deal with math. You got to make sense of what you're seeing in the world. You've got kids in Chicago and all across this country who are below grade level in reading and writing and math. And not only are they being indoctrinated in their classrooms, EJ, but now they're being turned into activists on behalf of teachers' unions. What do you say about that?
And Brian, we're paying for it, right? These are far left institutions, let's call them what they are, that are being funded by our tax dollars. And you're absolutely right, Brian. The literacy rates, the numeracy rates are pathetic. You have plenty of schools in that district where they literally don't have any kids, anybody on certain grade levels who can actually read or write or do math on their respective grade levels. That is beyond appalling. That is a complete and total failing of these kids, many of whom education is going to be their only path out of a cycle of poverty and government dependence. And so once again, look at the incentive structure here, right? The incentive structure does not align with better outcomes for students, instead with better outcomes for the teachers' unions, specifically the leadership of those teachers' unions.
You know, Kaylee, I want to look at this in the context of the midterm elections. So we see the crowd there on our screens. Look, they're crazy, but they are mobilized and they're out there. I mean, we know that Democrats, they're united to try to defeat the Republicans this November. You look at some of these elections, whether these special elections, these state elections as well, since President Trump took office, Democrats have been overperforming their 2024 margins. So what do Republicans do to get their voters out? How do they get them motivated, particularly without President Trump on the ballot?
Well, I think Republicans have to prove that they actually want to be elected to office. And that starts by prioritizing some of the things that voters sent them there to do. You know, I would like to remind everyone that the Save America Act is still essentially dead on arrival in the Senate, despite it being controlled by Republicans. That's going to be a problem, especially among voters who turned out for Trump in the past 3 elections and want to see his agenda passed. And especially on the economy, I don't think that there's any question that the Trump administration has made significant headway on affordability. There's a reason that the markets are so much more optimistic now than they ever were under President Joe Biden. But I do think that there's an outstanding question of how everyday Americans fit within the economy that is being built. And I think this is especially true for my generation, Gen Z. I'm really glad to see that President Trump was touting his reforms on Social Security and eliminating the taxes there. But I gotta say, that is not going to move the needle with the younger voters that you need this November. Quite frankly, we are far more concerned about Social Security still being around at all by the time we reach retirement age.
EJ, do you think the president's latest move here with these retirement accounts that you can get, look, if you can't get one through your employer, you can open one of these up, the federal government will match it. Do you think that gets us some way to addressing the concerns that Kaylee just raised?
I mean, to a certain extent, Brian, sure, especially since we really have to eventually grapple with the reality that Social Security is set up as a Ponzi scheme. It's not as if you put away money and then you eventually get that money back when you retire. That's how it's sold to Americans, but that's not the actual mechanic at play here. It's, again, exactly like a Ponzi scheme where today's investors are paying for yesterday's investors. Today, you have people working, paying into Social Security, and that money is going to pay today's retirees. There is no lockbox. You don't have an account that's all a bunch of hogwash. That's not how the system works. And so when I look at things like Trump accounts, when I look at things like the expansion of these special kind of IRAs that they're talking about now, which will probably need to be codified by Congress into law. I like those things, Brian, from the standpoint of I think they are an off-ramp eventually to Social Security, which again is not going to be around eventually for us.
You know, Kaylee, I want to get you in before we have to go. You mentioned some of the positives of the economy. I was looking at a recent Harvard-Harris poll, which is typically favorable to the president. And a majority of voters believed that the economy now is worse off than under Joe Biden. So why is there this disconnect on some of the positive gains in the economy under President Trump with the way that voters perceive it?
I think that it's high expectations, quite frankly. I think that President Trump made bold promises on the campaign trail, and although the markets are certainly responding favorably, people have yet to feel the effects of that in their day-to-day lives. I mean, the fact of the matter is, guys, gas prices are still high. Grocery prices are still high. My husband and I were just talking about how much we pay for groceries now versus several years ago. And part of this is just the lingering effects of inflation from the Biden years that we have yet to really grapple with. I mean, the fact of the matter is costs probably are never going back down to pre-2020 levels. And I wonder if the Trump administration does need to do a better job messaging to the American people that while relief is coming, it's not going to be immediate. And it is going to require electing Republicans once again in November to finish the job that they started when Trump took office in 2024.
We'll be covering it.
EJ, Kaylee, great to see you both. Thank you very
guys.
much.
Appreciate you.